Beautiful sight to see these beautiful people. You're looking beautiful. The artist is Desmond, and I want to say he's not that handsome, but he has some big teeth and he loves to smile. Other than that, there's not much else to say. Okay, let me just say, I had a wonderful life. It was not rich in material stuff, but it was extremely rich in values and principles. It was rich in the love for family and community, and that richness is what makes good community, and you know, it helped to make good country, good state, good cities, and good towns. And that's what I had as a child growing up. My mom was a beautiful lady. I always remember my mom because she had big, beautiful hands. And the reason why I knew this, because I was at the end of those hands a lot of times, because you know, I want to say I was a good kid, because whenever time she thought I did something wrong, because she never usually had to see, she could just look and tell, and she would say, okay, you know you did something wrong. I mean, I'm saying it in a good way. She don't say it that beautiful. You know, she said a little bit more stern, you know. And she would call me to talk to me about it. But I was the baby brother. I'm the baby brother. I have, like, you know, a bunch of other big brothers. They whoop me too. And they would run. When they do something wrong, they don't take whooping. But I was more scared of the dark. So if I didn't go take my whooping, that means I had to sleep outside. And that's not London. That's no street light. That means it's really dark out there for me, you know. So over the years, I had to willingly go take my whooping. And then my situation that I end up in, those whooping, taking responsibility, as Mr. Junior Smart teaches at SOS, that one of the principles is to take responsibility for your actions and try to repair the damage that you have caused. And just know that if you do something bad, you'll have to pay the penalty for it. And it makes me strong, because my mom taught me that when I was a child, and I grew up to love it, and now I'm embracing it, Mr. Smart.
How long did the book take you to write?
I started to write this book in 2002. I was playing soccer in America, but football in America. I don't want to, you know, I know you guys, I call it soccer but you guys call it football. But I was playing football one time. And oh my goodness. Manchester United, Manchester City, Manchester, which one? Okay, I'll just go with Mr. Sterling. You know that guy? The best in the world, isn't that right? Okay. So I was playing football one day, and I fell and I broke my arm. I got a compound fracture, and it got infected, and I had to be hospitalized for almost 9 weeks. And during that time, I wanted to figure out what I was going to do. It's like a state of reflection. I become extremely reflective, and this desire to write came to me. So in 2002, I began to write. And I write the first page, and the second page, and 50 page, and 100 page, and today we have a book.
I've been told that this book is part of a trilogy of stories. What can you tell us to expect in the next book?
Well, this is the first book, and it's kind of laid the foundation. The second book is going to be a book that take you to a different level of sophistication in the thinking of the gangsters. So the first book, it was like rah, 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 rah. And the second book, you're going to have to do a little bit more complex. The story is going to have some little bit more meaning to it. It's going to, put a little bit more meat to the bones. Yes, in that sense, Mrs. Smart. Well, one of the things that I've always believed in, and since I went back to school, and began to learn to actually read and understand a little bit better, I come to the conclusion that it's very important for us to encourage social sciences in school, arts and, stuff like that, to kind of help young people, to motivate young people to tap into their creative energy. So even though this is a story that, in truth, is a story about a time that there was violence in the street, there was drugs, there was money, there was instant gratification, there was materialistic motivations and such like. And that's what the story is about. It's a fictional characterization of what took place during that era of the crack epidemic in the United States of America. So the story in of itself, just taken, that would not mean much if it was just, you're trying to glamorize something, which in truth that's what entertainment does to a certain degree. Entertainment is most times a fiction of our imagination. But we do not want to stifle young people by telling them they cannot write or sing what they feel and taste or see. We want to encourage that. So one of the messages I want to give from this book is that we want to encourage young people to be creative, to love the arts, to see things from their perspective and to explain them from their own approaches and their own experiences in life. Because if we don't do that, then everybody's going to be walking in the same direction, chewing gum at the same time and talking like me. And I'm not sure if we want that. Because, so that's probably what it is. I want it to be known that it does not matter where you come from, what challenges or adversity you encounter in life. If you believe in yourself and is willing to take responsibility for your action and to change direction and to do what the Bible says, to be born again, then indeed, if that's what you get from this book, it's a story of redemption. Not the story, but the process by which we arrive at the story. That's what I want to say.
So with that in mind, do you mind sharing a piece of the story of the book?
Yes, I think I'll leave the book on the deck for you.
Have I got my signed copy as well? Could you bring my signed copy?
Yeah, I'm going to read I think I want to read a little passage. The entire book is a fiction of my imagination, so I'm pretty sure there's no part that I don't like. I like the entire book, but there are passages that have an emotional side to it, and I think I want to take a minute to just read a little bit. I think I was going to make a better person read it who is a little bit more able to, to articulate a little bit better, but I think I might try myself. It's good to try, yeah?
Yeah, man.
All right. So this, the passage that I'm going to read is talk about a young man. He became one of the gangsters, but he was reflecting, he was going back to in his childhood. And each of these characters in the book, they all have their own stories. And each of these stories help to shape who they become in life and as they come into adulthood. So this guy is one of those guys that, you know, he kind of, to a certain degree, remind me of me. So I'm going to read a little bit about him for 1 second, yeah? I don't know if you can pass that so we can put it up. That you could read the Harry Potter book, but if you hear the author's voice reading, it is a different story. So I hope this makes a difference for me as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shaking his head. Gotta do it right way. I'm kind of one of those guys who is kind of a little sticky for details, you know? All right. Yeah. 1, 2, testing. Went back in his life and he was reflecting. And here he was talking, he was shaking his head. Shaking his head, he took a deep breath. Now he was back in Jamaica. He was only 15 years old. Like a millstone, he wore it around his neck. That fateful day his mother died. It was one of those days he would never forget. Now with his back up against the headboard, memories of that day came flooding through his mind. He saw it as if it was yesterday. That fateful day his mother died, it all began with a fist fight between him and 2 other youths. You know, in Jamaica we call young people, young boys and young girls, youths. That's why we say it like that. To say the least, the 2 youths got the best of him. In other words, they whooped him. His little 2-room board house was in the same yard as that of the other 2 youths. When his mother saw him after the fight, she got upset and grabbed him, dragging him 5 doors down to where the other boy lived. Going up to the boy's front door, she knocked the door and waited. For more than 2 minutes, she waited until the boy's father finally came to the door, demanding to know why she was knocking on his door. Stepping up to him, she began to complain how his son ganged up on her son. Your boy and his friend beat up my son. I want to know where me picnic do them. That's straight Jamaican, yeah? The boy's father did not have any kind word for her. Immediately after she finished speaking, he began to curse her out and calling her son soft. Move your ass from in front of my door, you and your little idiot picnic, the boy's father said. Fowl, who was our son's name, watched as tears began to run down his mother's face. Her hands began to tremble. Fowl remembered how sad he felt. He remembered how he stared at the man. Then without a word, he turned away, following behind his mother with tears running down his face. That morning he cried for his moms. Getting back to his little 2-room board house, he hugged his mom. She hugged him back. Her face was wet with tears. He too was crying. Wiping his tears away, she told him not to cry. Stop the bawling, she said. We soon get to move out from here to somewhere better. Me soon have enough money to get a new place where we live, she said. Looking up at his mother, he nodded and used the back of his hand to wipe tears from her eyes. Go get ready for school, she told him. But he did not move. He stared in his mother's face. Mama, he said, me I go help you, he said to her before turning away. Watching as he turned away, his moms could not help herself. His little words brought more tears to her eyes. They comforted her soul. Then she loved him more. After he was dressed and ready for school, she hugged him and kissed him. Holding his little hand, she considered his eyes. You must never forget how much I loved you, she said. Looking at his mother, he smiled. I love you too, Mommy, he replied before turning for the door. Standing at the doorway, she watched him until he was out of sight. 20 minutes later, she was out the door for work. She had a decent job, working as a housekeeper for a Chinese family in the New Kingston area. Arriving at work that morning, she asked her boss for a few hours to go take care of some business. Instead of a few hours, her boss gave her the entire day off. She was glad for the day off. Now she could go look at a 2-bedroom apartment in the halfway tree area. By midday, she was back home. She was in love with the place she went to look at. The owner of the apartment was asking for $300 per month. She had to come up with $900. The landlord wanted 2 months security deposit before she could get the keys. With her next paycheck, she would have enough to get the place. Returning home, she had to walk almost 4 miles. It was a hot and humid day. Getting inside her home, she dropped her bag in the little front room, kicked off her shoes and went straight for her bed. 2 minutes and she was fast asleep. The tin roof and the apartment had the apartment boiling hot. As she slept, sweat poured off her skin as if it was water. By 3 p.m., Fowl, her son, school was out. He was supposed to be on his way home. As the first person out of his class, with his book bag over his shoulder, he began to run in the direction of his home. His mother and most of the people in the tenement yard were at work. Well, so he thought. 10 minutes away from his home, he reached one of his mother's friends' house, a lady he called Miss Blossom. Pushing the lady gate open, he looked around to make sure no one saw him entering the lady's yard. He knew the lady worked and that no one would be home at that time of the day. Going into the lady's yard, Fowl went around to the back of the house. Going into the lady's kitchen, he grabbed a large can of gasoline, of kerosene oil, and a box of matches and 2 big rolls of newspaper. He then left the kitchen and headed into the shrubs behind the house, where there was a bushy walkway that could take him all the way back to his little 2-room row house. His little 2-room row house was attached to another 6 2-room apartments. It was like this long, tin roof board structure that housed 7 families, including his family. His 2-room apartment was the second to the last one. The boys who had beaten him up earlier lived in the second and the third 2-room apartment from the front of the building. Walking along the bushy path, he thought about going inside his apartment and changing his clothes, but he said no. He thought he would not have enough time. Moving quickly, he came up behind the second apartment. This was the home of one of the guys that beat him up earlier. Behind a big breadfruit tree, he bent down on his knee. For a minute or two, he just watched, looking around to make sure no one saw him. With the thick shrubs and big limbs from the breadfruit tree hanging down from where he stood, it was made good for hiding place. As best as he could, he made his way up to the back of the second apartment. Then for the last time, he surveyed the area. There was no one in sight except for a light breeze blowing against the tree limb. It was quiet and peaceful. Slowly, he bent down and began to open the can of kerosene oil. Like someone programmed, he began to work. Going the full length of the second and the third apartment, he poured the gasoline along the base. When the can of gasoline was empty, he dropped the can and pulled out the box of matches and a roll of newspaper. Stepping back, he lit the newspaper. Then for a second or two, he glanced over his shoulder. Satisfied that no one saw him, he tossed the roll of newspaper at the base of the second apartment. The roll of lit newspaper landed in a pool of kerosene oil, right at the base of where the second and the third apartment meets. Watching as the paper landed and seeing the flames running down the base of the apartment, he smiled to himself before turning and running back into the bushy area behind the breadfruit tree. A minute, and he grabbed his book bag and ran about 100 yards. Stopping, he turned around to see a huge fire. Crouching down at the side of the concrete drain that ran behind the apartment, he watched with glee and amusement as the fire began to engulf the entire apartment. Good for them, he said to himself. But then the fire began to spread. He watched in shock as the fire began to spread towards his apartment. As he watched, he began to tremble. Fear was taking over. The fire had reached his apartment. Jesus Christ, look where me do, he muttered. As he stared at the fire that was now raging, it seems as if he was going into shock. It was going on. Fire was everywhere. Black and gray clouds of smoke darkened her room. She could hardly breathe. Covering her mouth and her nose, she tried to feel her way towards the front of the apartment, but her eyes starting to burn. The smoke was starting to take its toll on her. Coughing real hard, she rubbed her eyes. Jesus, Lord, help me. Where foul they? She asked. Then with her last breath, she called out for him as the roof of the apartment caved in, collapsing on top of her. Foul was her last word in this life. And that's the reading from chapter 5. Book is trying to say is that some of these early traumatic situations do play a role as we grow up in life if we are not able to find a way to overcome. And Mrs. Smart had told me, because I'd asked him one day about mental health, and he had told me that it's not necessarily mental health, but it's emotional instability or emotional well-being or the lack thereof. And I do believe that some of us, we go through our life with hidden pains and trauma that we suffer and that we experience. And as a result, it sometime further in our life, it bears its ugly head in all different, what we call manners of evil. And this guy is truly became one of the evil ones in the book. I just want to say that I want you all to enjoy the book, so I don't want to tell you. I mean, for me, when I go to the movie, I like people to tell me the movie. And, you know, I don't really have too much problem with you telling me this story before time, you know. Mrs. Smart, I want to just thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, and it's very beautiful. And I work with St. Giles just now, and we go to schools and we talk to children and let them know that violence is a no-no, and gangs are no-no, and lying to save your friend is a no-no. And we try to teach them these things because these things are what my mom taught me. So, and I'm pretty sure most of us, the older guys in here, have a few fingerprints in their butt. So that's about it. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Where's the St. Giles Trust?
Okay, so St. Giles Trust is based in Camberwell. It's a London-based charity, although we're spread across the UK. We're working with society's most vulnerable. SOS is the project that I developed when I was in custody, and that works with young people that are involved, not just in gangs, but what we call criminal lifestyle choices. As a charity, we're always seeking and needing funding, but the work we do is invaluable. Just to give you an example, so SOS Plus, which we do in schools. Did you know we were actually based in Croydon as well at one point, but then the funding cuts and all of that stuff that hit. But the stuff that we do in schools has been oversubscribed. That second young kid that I said who died, his mum was the one that challenged me to go into schools. And so I did. Off of the back of that, I set up the SOS Plus project, and we are being oversubscribed. We're getting called by more schools now than ever before.
Could I just ask what SOS stands for?
Yeah.
Okay, right, it's a trade secret. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you all. No, I'm joking. I'll tell you the best definition that I ever had of SOS, and it was given to me by a 5-year-old girl. Her dad was in prison, and he had been barred from seeing her, just because of the offence, nothing to do with the partner or anything to do with children. And I'll tell you what, sometimes these young people just need someone to fight for them. They need someone to be in their corner. And I created a massive case. I fought for her to see her dad, even if it was just in a contact centre, and they overturned it. And she asked me the same question, what does SOS stand for? She said, does it stand for someone special? And I said, you know what, keep it. That's what we'll use. That's what we'll use from now on. But yeah, then she got her dad back. And that's, Okay, so SOS Plus, our youngest young person that we work with is just 10 years of age. That's how young we're getting drawn into this now. And the oldest is 35.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Because sometimes people get given long sentences, and in that time that's when they decide to make that change. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes young kids can be making mistake after mistake after mistake, but sometimes they get sent down. It's a misconception. Like in the newspapers they always say you have to be sent down loads of times to end up in custody. That's just not true. And females, an example of that, females are more likely to receive custodial sentences than males are the first time they're charged, which is crazy. Yeah, so...
Is there a difference between SOS Plus? Is it two different sort of...
They're part of the same, everything's part of the same family, but SOS Plus uses ex-offenders to go into schools, colleges, community centres, pupil referral units, and what we're using is our experience to try and show people the other perspective of the reality. Desmond's done it loads of times, and I know you know how tough they are. Some of these young people are really hard to reach, and the SOS service itself is one-to-one intensive support for young people that are caught up, and anyone can refer. And we don't close cases, so we're not like probation or social services. We don't have a time that we work with young people. As long as we're funded, a young person can disengage and come back whenever they're ready.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's all right, go for it. Mum, go.
I want to ask Desmond about the book then, your characters. Are characters that are actually making life-changing decisions as your characters in the book?
Oh, say, could you repeat it a little bit for me, miss, please? Sorry.
The characters in your book, okay, I'm assuming there are various of them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Are they making life-changing decisions then in a positive way?
Well, The Jamaican Gangs of New York is a book about a set of Jamaicans that went to New York back in the early 80s up to the 90s, who became involved in the drug and the gang and the drug epidemic at that time. And these were characters, as I tried to write about them, that came from very serious areas of Jamaica where they grew up in tough neighborhoods. And coming to the United States, they had one thing in mind, that was to make money, any means necessary. So for them, there was no, for a better way to say it, you probably wouldn't look at the surface of how they live and say there is anything redeeming about their life. But maybe if you like some of us consider ourselves to be social scientists, and we try to bring change in our community, and we cannot properly bring change or address problems in society if we only look at the surface. So we kind of dig a little deeper down into the issue, and Mr. June always tells us to learn to unpack. So the situation, he wants us to unpack it so we have a better understanding of it. So no, these characters in the book are not on the surface the typical brothers and sisters. They're a little tough. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Yeah, that's it. All right. Thank you very much. Yes. I just wanna stand up for a minute and say a big thank you and ask my little young brother, Mr. Alga, to come up here for 1 second. Yes, sir. Mr. Alga is How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing alright.
Yes, sir. This is my young brother. I love you to death, my young brother, and I know you want to do some poems, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to do your poems, because you know we see how